Hello and welcome to the Special Needs Sibling Podcast, where we talk about what life is really like as a sibling to someone with special needs. I'm your host Charlene, and today our guest is Alyssa.
Hi, Charlene. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited. I've never done anything like this. I feel kind of like a celebrity, so thank you.
My husband all the time, he's like, I'm married to a celebrity. I'm like, I'm not famous yet. He's like, oh, I'm married to a podcaster. I'm like, yes, that's the right thing to say.
One day though, right? One day.
Yeah, one day I'm hoping, like, yeah, there was more exposure, the better. Just because
Absolutely.
meeting more siblings is always good. Because I found you on Instagram. So that's how we
Yes.
met. So we had never met before, and then the internet is a great thing. So yeah, I found you on
Right?
Instagram, and then we messaged back and forth, and here we are recording. So that's an exciting thing.
Yeah, super. I mean, I was so excited to see your message. I feel like I've always wanted to do something like this, and it's so cool that you've created an outlet for our siblings to connect and talk about what it's actually like. So,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited and thank you for being here. So if you could introduce like your family structure, kind of like where you are in your lineup, and then how many siblings you have, and then who has a disability.
Cool. So I am one of five siblings. I am the second oldest. My older brother has autism. Um, Back when he received his diagnosis, he received an Asperger's diagnosis, which now we know they don't diagnose. But he is also bipolar, and he also has oppositional defiant disorder.
Okay.
He's 30. And then my little brothers are 10 years younger than me, and they're triplets. Um, so they're 18, and one of the triplets has autism. So his autism is is a lot different than my older brother's. He's
Okay.
more severe. He's limited verbal. Um, he just moved into a group home. He's he's great though. I mean, he's the apple of my eye,
Aw.
my entire heart, but he is awesome.
Yeah, I was like, triplets is already one thing, and then you have all boys,
Yes.
and then you have one that
Yeah,
has a
yeah.
disability on top of that. So that's like
Yeah,
that's
it's a
all
lot.
sorts of yeah, that's all
So
sorts
much
of
going on.
fun.
My parents, it was growing up, it was just me and my mom really kind of like running the show for all of these boys.
Okay.
My dad has Parkinson's as a result of a brain tumor that he
Okay.
had. Yeah, so he had a brain tumor for like I think it was like 15 years before
That's a
anybody
long
even, yeah.
time. Oh, he didn't
So,
even know like at that time either, or like
so his behavior kind of became erratic, and we were like, whoa, what's going on with you?
oh,
And then,
okay.
yeah, eventually he had, I don't know the term, a scan on his brain.
Yeah.
And
Oh, he went to one of the machines that then scans
one
them,
of the
right? Yeah,
fancy
I can
machines, yeah.
visualize it. Yeah.
And they were like, wow, he has like a brain tumor, like I think they said like the size of an orange on his frontal lobe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was removed, and as a result, he has a lot of cognitive deficits. So he lives in a nursing home. So,
Okay.
yeah. So I kind of like my mom and I divide and conquer as far as like who takes care of who. So I take
Yeah.
care of my dad, my mom focuses on my older brother, and then we kind of share the younger guy.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we split him.
That that's a lot of like that's a lot of care and like juggling musical
Yeah.
chairs and like all that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like it's interesting though because even though like his disability, like if we were to like say whose is the most severe,
Mhm.
like he's the easiest to take care of. The older guys are the ones who are causing all kinds of chaos. So,
Yeah, I feel like that's yeah, especially if they're 18. It's kind of like because they're growing into their own
hmm
like manhood and slash semi adults, not really. So it's like
yeah.
yeah, I feel like yeah, versus like your brother who's older than you. He's like he's just living his life and like hanging out, doing whatever he's doing. Like
Yeah, causing a ruckus wherever he is. Well,
yeah,
Cincinnati, but yeah.
yeah. So we like to keep it pretty open forum, which we've already been talking about various things. But is there any topics in particular that you want to bring up or ask about, and then we can just kind of wing it from there?
Cool. Well, I know that you and I both talked about how both of our siblings don't live with us anymore. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's kind of a topic I'd love to talk about because this is something that I'm just recently going through. So
Okay.
I think it's like super fresh. My brother just moved into a group home in November of 2022. So it's
Okay.
super fresh. And I know that you said that your sister,
Yeah, moved like basically a little bit over a year versus your brother, because my sister had moved
okay,
into her housing in like August of 2021. And so her housing situation is such that like so my parents like so housing meetings is a big part of like when your sibling turns 18 or 22 or whatever age per state that you're in. Housing is obviously like part of the conversation of like, hey, is your sibling going to live at home? Are they going to live with like a like another relative? Are you going to hire a
right.
caretaker in your house, or are they going to go to a house or go to a home? So for my family, we knew that my sister living with my parents in their home was not the option. Like we knew she was
Right.
going to live elsewhere. It's just kind of where and what situation it would be. The housing that existed already kind of in the area where my parents live wasn't super great. Like it was
Mhm.
okay, but we knew that wasn't that wasn't the ideal situation, but that would be kind of better than her just living with my parents forever.
Right.
um so what happened was at one of my parents' housing meetings, because obviously they're going to a bunch of them. I don't need to be at those, which is fine, because I don't think
Right.
I would get anything. So they had met this couple that was trying to like start their own kind of like privatized housing situation. So what they did was they met them, and so they were like, oh, so they were interested, and so fast forward, that couple they met had created this larger group of like 10 parents all together. And what
Okay.
they did was they formed an LLC, and from there they bought land,
Oh,
and
wow.
then on that plot of land, they split it into like two halves. So half of it is like a privatized housing thing that the LLC maintains and takes care of, and that's where all their like adult children live in like houses and stuff. And then the
Okay.
other half of the land is a nonprofit that they started. So those two organizations are
Wow.
separate but like related because obviously it's the same people. But that's
Mhm.
the nonprofit. So it's a farm that is there. So the idea is that like that farm can provide food and everything like for not only like the residents but like the community. So they have
Right.
like a farm stand like in the summer they do
That's so
what's that called?
amazing.
CSA? Is that what it's called? I think that's what CSA. I don't know. I'm probably getting that acronym wrong, but it's basically where like if I went to a farmer's market, I can pay them, and then like I get like a monthly supply of like vegetables
Oh,
or
okay.
whatever.
Oh,
So
yeah, like a
there's an acronym.
subscription situation thing. I know what you mean. There's an acronym. I'm not.
Yeah, so that's they have that like in the summertime. I
Oh,
don't remember what it's called.
cool.
Yeah, so and it helps that it's local, and so from there, and it
Do
provides
the residents
jobs.
that Oh, okay, that was my next question. Do the residents
Yeah,
do they work
they have
at the
the
nonprofit?
option. Yeah,
Okay.
so they have the option. So not the so part of the key of their LLC and starting it and then getting more families than the 10 was the diversity of disabilities. Because
Okay.
if you have like too much of the same disability that you don't qualify for certain things, there's all these like other
Okay.
red tape
Right,
things.
yeah.
So I think some of them work on it, and so then some of them just kind of help on like the days they have markets, and other times then they do other stuff. So
Okay.
people still go to like their like adult day programs. Other people they have like the staff come in and they just work with them whatever personalized like program they do like
Okay.
in the housing community. um so because they started from literally like they bought a plot of land, like it
Wow.
was probably 5 years. I don't even remember. I remember going to all like the events and like the fundraising at the beginning, but I don't remember what year it was. But I know that it was sometime before I was married, which would have been sometime around 5 years ago at that point. So that was an interesting struggle, and I bring that up just because it's like it's this weird thing where we need my sister to like continue to go to her day programs and like have her care at home, but we know she's going to move, and kind of like
Mhm.
what things like how does that work? So it was kind of like over those 5 years she was kind of stuck at home. The pandemic happened, all this other stuff,
Right, I'm sure
and
that
so
slowed things down.
yeah, and so that process was interesting for her because where she lives now is probably an hour and a half away from where my parents live.
Okay,
And
that's gotta be
so,
tough.
yeah, so one of the fascinating things about knowing that she was going to live there was like driving her there like once a month,
Mm,
every other Saturday,
okay,
kind of like getting the idea that she's not going to stay at home. So I think
right.
that's one of the more fortunate things is because she was not only am I far away from her, which is like another story that we'll get to, but like she's far from my parents, which is like kind of that's a very different thing because I think your brother's like almost down the street in his
Yeah,
housing situation,
he's
right?
he's 10 minutes from me.
Yeah.
He's 10 minutes for no, I think it's 11 from me and like 10 from my mom or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he was on a, I mean, I think it's a little different in New Jersey. He was on a wait list. He's been on a wait list probably you put your child on the list years before you're even thinking about it because you could wait
Mm-hmm.
a significant amount of time for a placement. And it had come up before that he
Okay.
had gotten a placement, but it was never somewhere nearby. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and some of his behaviors lately have been a little bit more intense. He has like these OCD, like ritualistic behaviors where he's just like taking it takes him like 10 minutes, like at least to like transition. So like getting on the bus, he has to like touch the door like 10 times and touch the floor. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it had gotten to be a little bit much for my mom. And I actually just moved out of my mom's house in August, which was really, really tough for me. It was something that, I'd wanted to do as like an adult. Like I need to move out. I need to move on from my mom's
Yeah.
house. Like it's time. But honestly, it was leaving him really truly that was the hardest thing for me because especially during the pandemic, like I stopped working for a little while to homeschool him.
Okay.
So we had really just started to function as like one unit. So moving out in general for me was super hard. And then not like, a couple months after I move out, my mom comes over to my apartment one morning and she's like, a group home came up that's 10 minutes from us. This
Oh man.
opportunity will not come up again.
Yeah.
And if so, it could be years. And she's like, my mom for him is an older mom
Okay.
because she had me and my older brother who are 10 years older than these
Yes.
boys. She was done. The triplets were a
Yeah.
surprise, by the way, a nice natural surprise.
Yeah.
Everybody's always like, was your mom taking fertility? I'm like, nope,
I
she wasn't even supposed to have one. Um, but yeah, so she was done. So she was like, it's just me. Like the other two triplets are getting ready to go to college soon. She's like, I just don't know how much longer I can do this. So
yeah.
she's like, I found a home for him. And I honestly didn't get out of bed that entire day.
Oh
I
man.
was I was a wreck. Like I couldn't even like function at work that week. I couldn't like I don't know why because I this was such a blow to me and I feel like you hear stories about like things that happen in group homes and side note
Mhm.
his experience in a group home has been fantastic. So everything
Okay.
that I was worried about
It's
wrong.
like not yeah.
Right. So I don't want,
Yeah.
if anyone's listening to this that is affiliated with Matt's group home, I love you. But um yeah, I was heartbroken and just like terrified because it was something that my mom and I had talked about, but it was kind of like, oh, like one day, like maybe. And in my head, in my unrealistic brain, I was like, he's
Mhm.
gonna live with me. I'm gonna get my life together really fast, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna have this beautiful house, and I'm gonna have, the Matthew wing, and like it was not realistic. And um, so so he moved in, and the first day we brought him there was really hard and he was so
Mhm.
confused. Oh my God, his poor little innocent soul just like leaving him
Oh.
there and he was like, "Mommy's
Yeah.
house." Yes, mommy's house. And I was like, "Oh
Oh
my goodness,
no. Yeah.
I cannot do this." And then, day 2 my mom and I went back and to visit him because we have the luxury of doing that with him being so close.
Yes.
And when we left, he started to engage in some self-injurious behavior, which for him is like it happens, but it's like probably like once every like 2 months, like,
Yeah, like it's
but
a
just,
more rare occasion than a common
yeah,
occurrence type of thing. Yeah.
yeah, he's usually a little, aggressive or elopes or this,
Yeah.
ritualistic OCD behavior, however you want to describe it. But yeah, so that
Mhm.
really stunk. But fast forward now, we described it to him as like Matt's house, and I was like, Matt's new house, like we really decorated his bedroom. And I feel like I'm a lot more okay with it. I mean, the week he moved in, I mean, the next day I was so heartbroken after seeing him engage in the self-injurious behavior. I
Yeah.
literally within an hour broke up with my boyfriend, stopped talking to everybody in my life, and I was just like tapped
Oh my
out for the week.
gosh.
Yeah,
That
it was
that is crazy.
yeah, I feel like it took me probably until like around Christmas time to like start to get myself back together. And I think
Yeah.
too like his group home team being so welcoming and like communicative. Like I text his group home manager
Yeah.
and I can see him, so like he and I have like a visitation schedule for the most part because he's a schedule guy, my brother.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'll
My
see him
sister
every
is too.
yeah, yeah.
You
I'll
have
see him
to.
every
You don't function without the schedule, but
right.
that's yeah,
That's
you just it's
just
not possible.
his way of being, and I think it reduces a lot of his anxiety. But so I go to see him on Sundays, which I think has been helpful for like a significant amount of time,
Yeah.
and then I'll see him work permitting like one day during the week to like get ice cream or something,
Mhm.
or to grab dinner, or sometimes I'll bring him to work with me, which we could talk about that later. But
Yeah.
yeah. um so yeah, I mean it's been a transition. It's been tough, but I actually think overall I mean, I don't know, he might be happier. It's hard to gauge. He doesn't fight me going there. And I
Which is
think,
good. I would think that
yeah,
that's already a good sign, like, for
yeah,
what you can or can't read. Like the fact that he's not fighting is
right.
a good indication. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's this one staff in particular there. I mean, and they're all fantastic. She just particularly, you can tell. Like
Mhm.
I pull up in the car and she's like opens the door and is like Matthew, and she's got like one of his favorite snacks in her hand, and
Aww.
you can tell she like really cares about him and really like loves him and knows him, and I
Yeah.
love that. For me, I mean, it is hard to hear somebody that knows him better than I do at this point because
Yes,
I
I
have
agree.
always, yes, yeah, I know you feel the same way. I have
Yeah.
always it's been me and Matthew like day one, especially because
Mhm.
I was 10 years older than him. Like I started right away. I was his girl
Mhm.
everywhere. Everywhere we were sitting next to each other at dinner. If he eloped onto a bounce house, I was the one to get him off. If,
Yeah.
I was with him at his school field trips because, by the time he was
Oh, yeah,
going
because you
on
were old
field,
enough to like actually have
yeah,
time to like go. Yeah.
yeah, I think I was in college for a lot of them. Like it was just everything. Everything we did. I was with him. You know. So it's definitely weird to hear that somebody knows him better than I do, but it is nice knowing that somebody cares enough to know him that well. So it's like this fine line of like I'm devastated, but I'm happy.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
oh no, I so the when I flew to so I'm like a 10-hour drive from my sister or an hour and a half flight depending on like what we do.
Okay.
So I flew to see her. What month was that? Sometime within the last 6 months. The actual month escapes me at the moment, but I was flying to see her, and I had all these feelings about it because I just didn't know because I had not seen her basically since before she had moved in her housing. Because I had
Okay.
moved, so I already had moved out of my parents' house when I got married. So me and her, and we were probably like a 20-minute drive from my parents at that point.
Okay.
So I didn't see them a whole lot in terms of like I wasn't there every day or anything.
Right,
So
right,
so
right.
that I already was like, okay, I'm gonna see her like once a month or once a week or whatever, family dinners if we wanted to go do something, whatever. But then I moved like to Oregon, and so now it's this thing where okay, I have to really fly or drive in order to see her. It's not just like a hey,
Mhm.
I can go to family dinner tonight and just
Right.
drive over. And so I had all these feelings because not only was I moving to Oregon, but I had not seen them really during the pandemic. I had seen them maybe like
Mm.
towards the end, and it was such a that I think, which we can come back to that or talk about that now, whichever. But that was its own phase of like watching it happen because I wasn't with her, and that was tough because it was like she and my parents like I had talked to them like all separately, and they
Right.
all were like there's not enough space in this house.
Yeah.
And so it's this thing where like, and it's funny because it's like I am very thankful I was not there, because I think it would have
Right.
been even, it would just would have been worse, because there's just not enough rooms in their house in the configuration where it would make
Right.
sense for all four of us to have like space. But it was just this hard thing to watch, and so not only like could I not see them, and it was hard because then she was having regressive behavior, which is like almost everyone with a
Mm.
disability during the
Yeah.
pandemic had regressive
Oh
behavior.
my gosh, yeah.
That's its own thing. So I'm watching her not do well. They're trying to transition her, getting ready to go to housing. My parents are kind of like over it because they're working at home and dealing with her at the same time.
Mm.
I'm just witnessing it from afar. I can't
Yeah.
I can't do anything because I don't live in the same household, right? So it's this thing where, so I had all these feelings like going to see her because it had been so long since I've like
Mm.
gotten interactive with her in any form without my parents. And my aunt was there, so like there was two of us. But one of the hardest things when I was texting her caseworker was, she goes, "Do you want support staff?" And I was like, I don't know. And so I told her I'll get back to her, and I had to actually think about it because if I don't have support staff, it will change the dynamics of me interacting with her.
Right.
But my problem was I had not seen her in so long that I don't like, if she had a meltdown, I would just be doing what I used, right? Like I would be kind of
Right,
reverting to my
right.
old tactics, not the new her.
Right.
And I went, well, I do need that type of support because they know her at this
Right.
point. And if something's gonna happen, like I can't, even with my aunt, I can't do anything
Mhm.
because I don't know. Yeah, so
Right.
I had all these like very confusing feelings seeing her. I see her, and then on the way home, I had also very like confusing feelings because I was
Mm.
like, these people get to spend time with her. They know her so much better. She's changed. I've changed, and I was like, I don't feel good about what happened, but I do. I don't.
Right. It's
Yeah,
like they have like entire lives without us now. And it's like, wow.
yeah.
At one point, like we were each other's lives, and it's so hard to think that, like, they experience so many people and so many things that we'll never know about.
Yeah, and it's, yeah, it just blows my mind because it's so exciting because they get to live their own lives now, but it's also
Right.
very disheartening because I'm like, but now I don't get to experience with you, and that part
Right.
is so heartbreaking because that was
Right.
so
And
much
it's
of my life, right? Is experiencing
mhm.
things together, or informing her, whatever. Like, yeah, that's so integrated in how we function, and now it's,
Yeah.
oh, that's someone else's actual job. Like that person gets
Right.
paid to actually hang out with you, but I
Mhm.
just have to be here. Yeah,
Right. It's
it's
so
so
different. And
confusing.
too, it's
Yeah,
like they're not gonna call you up and be like, "Hey, this is what I did this week."
I
And
know. I
it's
wish.
like,
I
if you
would.
see
Yeah,
them, right? Matthew will like, a couple things will come out here and there.
yeah.
But I really gotta he'll tell me about a snack he had. I'm like, "How's your day? Good or bad?" "Good." "What'd you have to eat today?" "Cupcake, yes." I'm like, "All right."
Yep. So yeah, no. Angela does the same thing, except the thing with her is, if I ask her what she ate, instead of just telling me what she ate, she will list her whole menu for the week. So half the time I don't know whether she's eaten it or she's about to eat it or she ate it
Right.
the previous day. So a
Right.
lot of times when I call her, then her staff is there, and then her staff kind of like, depending on who it is, kind of help her like navigate it
Well, that's
or
great.
whatever. But it would, it's helpful, but it's always funny because I would say like 9 out of 10 times the thing that she actually ate was not in the list of things she gave me.
Mhm.
She's just reciting
I
the
love
things
it.
she
Hey,
wants
we
to
love a
eat.
good
Yeah.
menu, though. We love someone who keeps track of
Yes.
their meals and knows what's coming.
Yep, she
I respect
knows.
it.
Yeah, like, yeah, her schedule is very much, she will recite it to me what she's gonna do next, times like 50, whatever the next like six things are, is what she'll tell me that she's
I
about
love
to
it.
do.
I love keeping track.
Yeah, yeah.
Matthew,
uh,
there's no menu. It's just whatever's in front of him. My guy's a food stealer, and all he does is,
oh,
yeah, his whole, oh my gosh. So funny enough, I mean, so I recently became his legal guardian. This was
Okay.
Tuesday,
Oh,
and
that's so recent.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that's
literally.
exciting. So congratulations, because that
Thank
is
you, thank
that's a big
you.
thing. Yeah.
This is something that I have like waited for so long. I mean, I don't know why. It's just like it feels so cool that like legally we're tied forever.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was reading the interview because a lawyer has to go out and interview him.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm reading her notes and she's like stating the questions that she asked and
Mhm.
she was like individual was not concerned with questions, was concerned with food. Individual left the area to find snacks. Individual ran
Oh.
into another classroom to find snacks. I'm like, all right, that's my guy.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
so funny.
he's
No,
so
yeah.
cute. But yeah, he food steals. That's my guy. When he
Yeah.
was little in restaurants, like walking out the door, we'd have to like hold his both hands, you know,
Yeah.
because he'd be stealing fries off of like random people's plates.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think, yeah. Angela, she never got to that point, but it was also like she it was this thing where we had to like we either prevented it early or we just trained her to not do it. But what was funny was so when that was when she was much younger, right when we were like kind of like elementary school, middle school age. So by the time that she
Mhm.
was kind of like in her late teens, early 20s, we had gone to this buffet, and fortunately we were like at like a family retreat situation where like every family like had it like had someone with a disability, so everyone like we're all
Okay.
common ground, and so
Very very neat.
yeah, and so there's this buffet, and so she just decided I want grapes and just grabbed it, and we're like, oh, I guess she wants grapes, and it was fortunately we're in that space where kind of no one
Right, it's
cares because
okay. Yeah.
everyone's like that's fine, like there are
Spaces
kids that
like
are
that
about to
are
do it.
just so nice. You feel
Yes.
free and like it's okay, you can relax for a minute because yeah, she's full of grapes, like it's cool.
Yeah, like a kid can scream in the back and everyone doesn't like no one flinches at
I love
all
that.
cuz it's
I
just
love
like
that.
no, we're just here. Yeah. So it's nice to be in community when everyone understands
Mhm.
everyone's perspective like siblings and parents and the person and like yeah.
Yeah.
Those are good things.
I
Yeah,
listen,
which yeah.
I've been in so many like public situations where people have made comments and like some of them are like real genuine. Like I took him to a diner over the weekend and he's a
Mhm.
loud guy. He's got he
Okay.
yeah, he's a very vocal guy. He just sounds like he's yodeling. I don't know how else to describe it.
You should
But
wear a
he's
yodeling outfit next time then it'll be like,
honestly
like
though. But and he's rocking and he's chilling. He's big too.
yeah.
He's 6 foot. And
Okay.
someone comes up and she was very, very nice. And she was like, I work with kids with disabilities. Have you ever tried headphones? And I'm like, yes, we've tried headphones. Believe
I
me, he's not about them. But I mean, and that was a very nice scenario. But there have been times where people are
yeah.
like staring and are like, what is that? Or I think too, little kids too. Little
Mhm.
kids make comments a lot, and no, totally fine for little kids to make comments. They don't know any
Yeah,
better.
because they're when they're learning, right? They're like, and
Right.
it's, until they see someone that like Lena looks different, and their parents teach them something,
Right.
they have no clue. Like they don't know.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
what I look for in that is I'm listening for the parent's response. Because
Oh
to
yeah.
me,
Oh,
that's what's important.
always. Yeah.
How are you educating your child? Like, are
Yeah.
you telling them like, "Oh, don't look at them"? Because I would rather you let's
Oh.
educate. Let's tell
Yeah.
them. And I think too, like, especially people that don't have someone with a disability in their life, they don't know how to respond. So maybe that's a conversation that we need to be having more with like,
Yes.
I don't know,
Everybody.
people not a part of the community, yeah, like, everybody, like, it's
Yeah.
okay to talk about it, like, you're not gonna catch it, like, let's be open, let's educate these kids, and let's show them that it's not someone you should be afraid of,
Yeah.
and somebody you should welcome, maybe with caution, don't walk up, and
Yeah, and don't scare them or anything like you
right,
would like your
yeah, like
friends. Like that was probably a bad
right,
idea. But like
they're
you
just
can
like
like
a
wave
typical
hello
person.
and it's
Right,
fine.
he's
Like the
cool, he might wave back, he might not, but,
yeah.
yeah, I think and the weird thing about my brother is, he's his autism is pretty significant. I don't see anyone in the community ever like him. Like,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, it is. Like, I'll see other people, like individuals with a disability, but nobody really like him.
Okay.
And not that, obviously, like everybody's different, but I don't see
Yes.
anyone kind of on his level. And I always wonder about that because I'm like, because people will look at him as if they've never seen anyone like him before.
Oh, that's interesting. I
Mhm.
don't I don't know. Cuz I mean I have like various theories that could be why, but I don't cuz I know that there are people not so much when they're younger, when they're older, they'll like move because they get
Mhm.
better support or there's like a
Right.
situation where in a different state it's better for them. Cause that's what blew. I remember when I was younger, when once I learned that every state had their own supportive services and
Right.
everything, I was like, why is it different? And it blew my mind because I was like, wait, but if there's the same person, not the same person, but if there's a person with similar disabilities that needs similar services, but the states just have different rules and regulations about
Right.
like that, how is that, yeah, it's
How
very
does that make any sense?
strange.
Well, I know New Jersey, I mean, from what I understand, is a pretty great place for individuals with disabilities. I know like services
Okay.
are all over the place. Like, so I work for an ABA agency and like there's so many ABA agencies in New Jersey. It's like so
Okay.
concentrated. Like you Google ABA or whatever type of
Of whatever service that you need,
related
yeah.
service you're looking for, they're everywhere. But I just wonder like, do you think people with individuals like loved ones that are on the same level as my brother are afraid to bring them out in public or they don't feel comfortable and I think us as like a community or a society like need to look at why that is and it should be a lot more accepted because I feel like I get a lot of looks
Hmm.
sometimes by like, well, why are you bringing him here? And it's like, well, why wouldn't I
That's
bring him here?
and it's strange too because so my sister is lower functioning than your brother, right?
Okay.
And it's this thing where Angela, she, when you see her, you kind of can like, oh, she has something. You can't quite like see it from like, it's not like she's like in like a like an actual physical disability
Right,
state where like
right.
you can
Same
see
with
it from
him, yeah.
far. Yeah, but it's this thing where I feel like people won't approach us because it's kind of like she's not like quote unquote normal looking enough for it
Right.
to be an issue, but I feel, or at least when I was younger, I feel like it's more, you get more the like distance stares, like, oh, should I get
Mm,
near you or not? And I
right.
feel those more with when I'm with her because people are kind of like, do I, and it really only comes up if she's doing something like quote unquote bizarre, right? Like if she's like
Yeah.
not having a good time, then it's like switch, and then everyone's like, oh, like,
What's
is
happening
she
over there?
okay? Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the part that like I don't think that ever gets. I mean, it gets old from the standpoint, but it's just like we all need to figure out some other method of this because when you're like 5 years old and you see your little brother or sister and you get stared at, like you're all like you're five, you're like, hey, this
Right.
sucks, I don't know what's happening,
Right.
right? You kind
Whatever.
of you get into like your teenage years, you're like, okay, they're just embarrassing. Like
Yes.
you don't feel embarrassed no matter what, and so it still sucks, but you're kind of like, okay, like we're all, I'm embarrassed because of my parents and my sibling, blah blah blah. But as an adult, it's just, it sucks because now you're aware of how people think,
Right.
and that, and it sucks because even if I'm in a situation in public, or not public, but just if I'm talking like coworkers or just strangers at a store, right, and it comes up that, oh, hey, my sister has autism, it's this thing where the response, generally speaking, that I've come across is, oh, I'm so sorry, or
Right.
like,
You're like, what is
oh,
that?
that, like, okay, and then we like it switches subjects, and I'm like, I, neither of those are the right response, and someone had asked me like, hey, when that happens, what do you want them to say? And I said to her, I actually have no idea, because I
Right.
just know what I don't want people to say, but I don't
Right.
know.
For me
Yeah.
personally, I want them to say nothing. I want them to treat him as if he is any other person just walking into a
Mm.
store. That's how
Yeah.
like I feel about it and I feel like everybody's opinion on that, can be different. But I would prefer like we not be a spectacle when we go to the store because I feel like for him like his impulse control is really low. So
Okay.
he's constantly trying to dart to things, and especially with this new OC, it's not new. It's just intensifying and
Yeah.
becoming a lot more significant. But it's just like he's touching things. He's, got to touch his lick the wall or whatever, like three
Yeah.
times.
Whatever.
I know. I'm like
Yeah.
Matt, germs, come on, bud. But like at this point, he never
He's
gets
building
sick.
his
His immune system,
immunity, I guess. Like,
right?
yeah.
His immune system is so strong from all
Yeah.
the random things he's licked. But like, and I just feel like every aisle I walk down, like, so I have to be on top of him because he will elope in the store.
Okay.
Like, so lately I've been bringing edible reinforcers anywhere I go with him to try and work through, this ritualistic behavior and
Okay.
some of his aggression. And just like staying on task, but he's like grabbing things. He's all over the place. I mean, I
Mhm.
can keep him, pretty contained. Lately it's been a little bit more difficult, but people are just every aisle we go down, we're a spectacle. So, I try to find times in the stores, like if I'm taking him to shop, right, I'm not going on a Sunday. Or, we used
Yeah.
to go to Wegmans every Sunday. That got to be a little bit out of hand because like and
Mm.
also too like respect. Some people are just like pushing through and I'm like, all right, you see him trying to like walk down, like give him a minute. But he's
Yeah.
also super sensitive to crying babies.
Okay.
Yes, so crying
That's
babies,
not helpful in
no. So
any public
now,
place, really.
right, and that he always has had a sensitivity to crying babies, but it's definitely intensified.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I don't know if it's I don't know. I don't know if because the environment he lives in now at the group home is like so sanitized, as in like no extra noises, like everybody, it's like it's
Oh, I see.
tailored to him. So I don't know if like
Yeah.
when he's out in the community now, it's kind of like, oh, what is this? These people are not,
Oh,
accommodating
yeah,
me. Like, what is this?
yeah.
But yeah, he becomes aggressive when he hears a crying baby. So like even like take like his favorite place is the park. So I took
Mhm.
him to the park Tuesday. And I was trying out some new stuff, but like sometimes I even get nervous to walk him past like the jungle gym because you'll hear a crying child in the distance, which isn't
Oh, yeah.
uncommon. I find myself hating crying babies. I'm like, someone make that kid stop, which is
Yeah.
like really insensitive. Because if it were him crying, I'd be like, all right, everybody chill. Which like
Yeah.
I feel for the kids, and but in that moment, I'm like, somebody turn the
Yeah.
kid off
Because it's
because I just
yeah.
want to take him to the park. But I've been
Yeah.
trying adding in extra praise, walking swiftly past the child, and then like
Yeah.
edibles during that time, probably on like at a very high rate.
Yeah.
Which worked. It worked last week. It did. So that's exciting. But yeah, so that's like really hard with him in public and so I just want him to be some everybody else.
yeah, and it's this weird thing too where I feel like in public, and I don't think as much. Well, okay, now I don't know because I'm not with her enough at this point to like anything recent for me to remember. But I know that it's this heightened like it's like a superpower mode thing
Yes.
where at home, who cares? You're annoying. I'm annoying. I don't. Whatever. We'll just do our
Right.
stuff. Don't steal my things. Right. Don't take my food. We can
Don't
move on.
yeah.
Yeah, but like like once you get out of the car, it's just like everything turned on, all the lights switch, like everything is
Mhm.
active, and you're like, okay, like you're just yeah. There's just I think there's just things that I'm hyper aware of because she would used to like dart and when she was like
Mhm.
really low, so I would look for things that she would like rip apart. There's other times
Mhm.
where I'm like, oh, there's a lot of people, or she's gonna run into this thing. So I would look for all these things around me, and it's like if I was in the exact same place without her, no, I would
Yeah,
not care
you're
about
not looking
any of
at it
those
all.
things at
Yep.
all. Yeah,
Yep. Everywhere I go, I'm looking for babies.
yeah,
And if we're in a restaurant, I know where all the exits are because you
yep,
have to be prepared at any moment. Yeah, and you're right, like a superhero type, super vigilant mode.
yeah,
And now I find like when I'm not with him, I'm so conditioned to hearing a crying baby and being like, "Is everyone okay?" And like
yeah.
reach for him, but he's not. I'm not with him, and it doesn't matter, and
No,
we're
I mean,
cool.
I will say that like now that you've moved out, like that you live separately, like you do end up like unlearning it. It takes a
Right.
little bit of time, but you do unlearn because I remember when I first moved out. So my sister she hates cabinets that are open. Like if you open a cabinet, you gotta
Okay.
close it, microwave, door, like the whole thing. She just has this
Alright.
thing about cabinets.
Okay.
And
I like it though.
so
Keep the kitchen tidy.
yeah, and so I like I'm at home or like doing stuff, and then one of the cabinets is open. It doesn't even matter if I left it or my husband left it open. And then I like sat down with my food, and I was like, "Oh man!" And so I got up and closed it because my like I knew that I could like hear her yelling at me to like go
Right.
close the cabinet, and it's not like she's yelling, but she definitely will not let it go until someone closes
Right.
it. And so, and now I'm like, I don't care. Like, I leave stuff open all the time, and it's like, okay, that has passed. But it's definitely this thing where you start to learn what annoys you versus what annoys them.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
that it starts becoming more clear at like over time. Like, because if yeah, since he just moved, then that's a different. And you also still interact with him on a pretty like
Yeah.
weekly basis, so that's also a different
The one
thing.
I mean, no, I mean there are some things that I have like definitely unlearned. Like I was so used to my bedroom has always been his favorite room in the house. He has his own
Okay.
room, his own bed, his own TV, his own like special relax area, but it doesn't matter. My bed, my room is his
Oh,
spot.
funny. Yeah.
So the one thing that was so weird for me when I moved into my apartment was
Mhm.
coming home. His big thing is to take all the covers off my bed.
Oh man,
Every day it had become routine for me to pick the
oh,
blankets up and put them back. Yeah, he
that's a
would
lot of
dump
work.
my laundry. I don't know why, but
Oh.
yeah. So, and then like we had developed this routine of like he had to go fall asleep in my bed first, and then I'd have to wake him up and move him. So I'm like, bro, you're not
I
small,
oh,
and you're
that
not
is
a little
not
boy. You're
no
not
one
sleeping in my bed
that's too
anymore.
much for anyone. Like
Right.
I
When I
don't
mean,
yeah.
when he was
6 foot?
really
No
little, he
no.
used to come into my bed. Like that was like we were
Yeah, but
always
okay, but you
yeah,
can lift them
now
with two
no.
arms, like whatever, move on. Like
Right. I have pictures of him like showing up at my door in the middle of the night, like really little, mad in like his like Mario PJs and like I forget what his pillowcase was. I want to say it was Lion King
yeah.
and just like at my door with like his eyes barely open, this is bed and I'm like, okay. But now I'm like, boy, you are old. You have your own full-size bed up there. Get up there. So,
yeah.
we started this routine of me waking him up when I was ready to go to bed and him like, doing his little dance and then going up.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that's been really different for me. Is like, oh, I come home from work and my blankets are not on the floor. Everything is exactly where I left it, which is like crazy. So crazy. I'm like,
yeah.
wow, this is cool.
Yeah, and now if you leave a shirt on your bed, you're like, oh, that was me. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I have no one I can blame now for the mess. It's just me.
yeah.
Just me. But yeah.
Oh, it's so funny. No, yeah, there's so many like different yeah, there's attributes that and there's attributes that I have or that I've learned just inherently just due to like living with her and stuff. And so yeah,
Mhm.
so living and it's interesting because even my parents, right? It's kind of this thing where now that I'm like away from everyone, I'm like, oh, there's stuff that my parents do that was for her. There's stuff that my parents do for them, and
Right.
there's this stuff that I have to like just appease both. And then now I'm like, oh, I don't have to do any of those things. I can just be at
Right.
peace with the world.
Be yourself.
One of the things that I guess I didn't recognize until probably within the last year, maybe not even. It's basically when I started like talking to my therapist about it was like my like friendship dynamics. Just because it's this thing where I feel like growing up, I had a very hard time making friends for
Yeah.
various reasons. I've now recognized just like talking to her about various things. But one of the things that I always had problems with was people like getting empathy for my sister because it's like no one would understand what I was talking
Right.
about. And it's
Yeah.
this thing where it's even my very closest friends who I've been friends with for, over 10 years at this point, like they get it more and
Right.
they understand more, but I it's just so hard cuz like having sleepovers was like not an option. Having
No,
people
it was
over for
not.
dinner
Mhm.
wasn't also an option, and I was just like, oh, I don't know. But I would always hear everyone else talk about, oh, I went to so and so's house, I went to so and so's, like, and all this
Mhm.
stuff, and I'm like, I guess I'll just be by myself. Like, and it's so
Yeah.
sad when I like think about, but it's just, yeah. So that's just, I know that's how I felt like growing up. Now it's a little bit better because it's, you kind of grow out
Right.
of certain things, and you're not trying to be cool anymore. You just kind of
Right,
do
yeah.
your own
Who
stuff,
wants to
and
be
you're like,
cool?
I like this thing. I'm gonna
Right.
make friends who like that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, wait, I think that's the best part of adulthood is just being like, wait, I don't want to be cool or like anybody else.
Yeah.
I just like want to do my thing.
Yes.
Side note, I
Yeah.
that is definitely like you just don't care anymore. You're like, this is me.
Yeah.
For me, friendship wise, I mean, growing up, Matt and I are 10 years apart, so it was like a little bit different. But
Mhm.
he and I were so attached that if I had a friend come over, they were hanging out with Matt too. He was like, so if we did a group project though, it wasn't at my house.
Right.
And
Yeah.
also too, like little triplet brothers, so for the most part, nothing was at my house.
Oh
I
yeah. Just
understand.
despite, yeah. That's just,
Yeah, they
yeah.
would the parents would be like, "You're coming to our house. Your mom's gonna
Yeah.
take a break." Yeah, but no, so for the most part, like everyone growing up was like super accepting of him. I mean, I think it's very rare that somebody wasn't. I do think at the time though he was like little and cute and like,
Mhm.
now he's a lot older. Um, I do I don't know how some of my friends like I feel like they don't really see him that much anymore. I actually
Okay.
I don't know that they see him at all anymore. Like my friends that I don't work with. Um,
Yes.
so I don't even know if they would know how to interact with him. So, I mean, they all love and like support him and they're like everything I
Yeah.
talk about with him. But I do think growing up, like especially in high school, there was just this difference between me and other people only because I had a single mom
Mhm.
and there were triplet boys and one had autism and like Friday nights I was babysitting and
Yeah.
like I at a young age was responsible for little kids
Mhm.
and Matthew and even now like I am his legal guardian like things are just different. I have always been responsible for more than just myself and
Yeah.
like even though like I just became his guardian like I have always been a huge presence in his life.
Yeah.
Not because I was required to but because I wanted to be. I wanted to be a part of everything. There's not one milestone of his or the other boy's life that I ever wanted to miss. So, sometimes I wasn't going out or I remember once I went to a party
Mhm.
and I brought Easter eggs to stuff for them because it was the night before Easter.
Okay.
And so like everybody's like, going crazy and I'm sitting in the corner stuffing Easter eggs, but I wanted to be there. But I mean, that's how things were definitely different. But I think now so I, as I said before, work for an ABA agency and um a lot of my best friends like I work with them here. So I've made a lot of
Mm.
my best friends through this company.
Yeah.
So my roommate that I live with now, she's gonna listen to this and she's gonna be so happy that I just brought her up. Um
Yay.
She's gonna be like, "Oh my god, you
Yeah.
talked about me, I knew it." My roommate now, and I'm gonna say some nice things, and she's gonna love it. Um, no, she's fantastic, and she's like very welcoming of him, and she's working to be
Mm.
a behavior analyst, which is great. And I think that that's a big reason why I have allowed her to get so close to me because she is so welcoming, and he's hard, and he's a
Yeah.
big guy, and she's not scared of him and like he's
Right.
allowed over whenever there's never like
Yeah.
oh my god your brother's here like first of all if
Oh,
someone
right,
ever
right.
said
Yeah.
that the smackdown would be happening and I'd be moving
Yes.
out or they'd be
No, I was
moving
gonna be
out.
like, you would not be friends or roommates
Yeah,
any
we're done.
longer. Like that. Yeah. That would be game over very very fast.
Right, and like her mom, I work with her mom too who is like also super supportive and um our other friend that we work with like everybody all of my super close friends work here and are
Yeah.
have either worked with him at some point and they are so understanding of like knowing that I need to do what it takes to take care of him. And so like when I got guardianship, Tuesday was court and
Yeah.
like at work they threw like a little party and I
Oh,
brought him, yeah, they
that's
had like
awesome.
flowers and cupcakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so too, like, every significant other that I've ever had, you know, a big
Yeah.
thing that I take into consideration is Matthew.
Oh
I
yeah,
remember,
100%.
yeah. I remember being in a bar and someone like, "Oh, like that guy wants to talk to you." And I took one look at this guy and like this is super judgmental of me. Super judgmental. So, and I was like, "He's not going to like Matt. I'm sorry, I'm busy."
Yeah.
And that's like how I pick my, partner, that it's like if they're not accepting of him and they're not willing to understand that even though as my partner you're going to be someone that's important to me, but he will always come first,
Yeah.
it's not going to work out. So I currently, I mean, not currently, I have a partner who is very understanding of that. He's great. He's a behavior analyst, which I do think is a big thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because he gets him. So like when I was at the park with him, he was there with me. So it's nice like to take him out in public too,
Yeah.
to have someone who's also ready to handle his problem behavior and jump in at any moment.
Yeah.
And like knows what to do, and it isn't like, oh, why is he hitting you, or why is he making that
Oh
sound?
gosh, that
Yeah, it's
yeah.
just so nice
It's
to
so
not have to
hard.
explain it to someone. And I think having someone that's able to take him out in public with me, and like, he likes to go to do little kid things, like he wants to go to the aquarium and the zoo, but like
Yeah.
he's hard at the aquarium and the zoo, but like having someone
Those are
that
very
can
claustrophobic spaces too. Just like I'm thinking about like when my sister used to go to the zoo, and it's just like and
right,
they would go through it pretty fast because she would basically like walk laps around the
right,
zoo, but there's just I can only imagine like if she was more fascinated in animals, that would just be much more difficult than
right.
literally walking just to zip around the zoo as a walking path.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it's really nice to have somebody that can do all of that with me and like support and talk through his problem behavior and just talk about him in general, and gets it. I think that's been a
Yeah.
huge thing for me. And I think that's really again big with the people that are super close to me. And I never really thought about it until right before
Hmm.
recording this podcast. I saw that this was a topic and I was like, huh, I never really thought about that. The people that I, see every single day are people that
Yeah.
understand him.
Yeah,
So,
and it's interesting like the people like anyone new that you meet, it's kind of this very like I mean it seems like a very high school thing, but it's true. It's like I'm gonna test waters with certain things, see how you react, and then decide am I gonna tell you about my sister or not.
right,
Right. And it's this thing where I'm not doing it on purpose, but in my subconscious, it's just now I know. I mean, I'm much more tactile about it now than I was when I was younger, where I would literally only talk about her or not talk about her at all. But it's this thing now where if I'm close enough to you with certain things in general, then I'm like, okay, we can talk about this
right,
now because there's a certain level of acceptance that needs to exist as for me as a person, and things that like if I'm willing to tell you this and you respond in a way that like I feel comfortable with, then like okay, let's talk about Angela because it's
right,
you're gonna be at least more willing to talk about it, or at least willing to let me finish my thought. Because
right,
there's just been so many situations, or not so many. There's one person I think about in particular, and I think this was just this point in time when I was telling this specific story, and she kind of just gave me this look. And we were in a group of people. It was just like I happened to look in her direction. She just kind of was like, "Oh, okay," and I was like, okay, I'll stop
hmm,
talking." And I mean, she wasn't being rude or anything, right? We're just
right,
all having like dinner or whatever, and it was just one of those things where I'm like, it's made me really appreciate like the friends that I had that are close. I like value them a lot because to get
hmm,
to that level, it's so hard. I mean, okay, it's hard for regular humans. It's even harder
right,
when you have another human on top of that to accept
right. Yeah,
with
absolutely. There's like
that.
this sense of
Yeah.
like protectiveness too that you have with like
Yeah.
everybody that comes into your life. It's like if you're not going to treat my person well, and also too, what does it say about another person if they're not willing to treat an individual with a disability well? But I
Yeah.
mean, not that that's something I've come across. It's more just like the willingness to understand and conversate about it.
Yeah,
um
and then that was a big thing when I like before I had met my husband, right? It's just like anyone that I liked or was like, oh, you could be potential or whatever. It's just like, if you couldn't interact with anyone that was just different from you as a general statement, right? Because obviously, like, in public school, there's kids just with disabilities everywhere, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like you just watch how they interact with them. Because like, if you're gonna interact with like that, just as like you as a person, and I have issues with it, clearly it's not gonna get any better from that
Right.
point. And so it's like its own filtering system because it wasn't negotiable for me, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's what one of the things that was kind of, I guess, not relatable, like when all my friends in high school, so they're all dating people or they're like trying to figure stuff out. I'm like, I would hang out with this guy a lot, and my problem was like, yeah, we liked each other, but I was like, I don't need to bring you into this situation knowing that we're not gonna last through it. Right? Like I didn't
Right.
like him enough. We're gonna stay together through like college, whatever. I'm like, I like you now, but that doesn't. And even
Right.
then, it's one of those like you get attention, so you're like, oh, I'll just.
Mhm.
I enjoy the attention, so I'll just do
I'm just
whatever.
gonna go for it.
Yeah, and it's just hard because it's like I don't need to make this investment in this at
Right.
all. And even then, when I was dating my husband, so at that point, so we started dating around right after I had gotten conservatorship of
Okay.
Angela. And so at that point, right, it's not that I was going to be it's different from your situation where like your mom is older and it's kind of like you're kind of going to be the primary person for the most part,
Right.
but for me it was more like if both my parents were incapacitated, it would fall on me.
Right. Right.
But because it's so fresh in your mind when it's happening, right? I
Yeah.
was very upfront like, hey, like when my parents get older and can't take care of her, like it's gonna be me. It has to.
Right.
Like there's no I don't have other options, right? And so I
Right. Yeah, you
remember
don't want to get down the line in like your marriage or relationship and be like,
yeah.
"Oh, this is happening."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah, and so we would talk about it a lot, and I probably would talked about it to an extent where I really needed to make sure that he understood that's what the priority was for me when it came down there. And I mean, obviously, when it's super fresh, that's all I would talk about because that's
Right.
you're signing papers, you go to court, you do the whole thing. But
Mhm.
it was it was interesting to talk to him about it, and I'm glad that he understood it. But what was interesting was after that, then he was able to like go to this family retreat and then like work with people who had specialties and meet their whole families and stuff on like his own terms, right? Like
Right.
it's not just interacting with like me, my sister, and my parents. And so him interacting with that like kind of like other subsets of families that were impacted by disability of any sort really made a difference because he could see the dynamics in how our family functions different, right? Because
Mhm.
even my family, your family, like we relate, but there's
Right.
still gonna be differences that exist even
Mhm.
despite us being able to
Oh
relate
yeah,
on a lot of it.
absolutely.
And so that helped a lot in terms of like how he could see how conservatorship was impacting because the family that he was interacting with was a single mom and I think he
Okay.
was high school age, so he's like a teenager. So
Okay.
she was seeing like how what the dynamic is, right? Versus like
Right.
where I'm very fortunate where both my parents are they're married to each other,
Mhm.
they're still at home, I'm still there.
Yeah.
Like it's not because that's not everyone's
Right,
situation,
right.
and that's yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's great that he was able to go out and have like his own experience. I don't know. That was after the two of you started dating, right?
Yes, yeah,
So yeah, I mean, that's such a testament to like his dedication to like understanding you and like your sister and such. So like that's really wonderful of him. And it's hard. It's a hard thing to explain if people haven't experienced it. And like,
yeah.
like how do you explain like, oh yeah, I was up last night. My brother set the microwave on fire, and they're like, wait, what? And I'm like,
Yeah, but you say it to me, I'm like, oh yeah, all right.
you're
That
like
I
been there.
literally it's passive. It's like it's like I ate Doritos for snack, and then we just like
Right.
it's really
That's how
not
the
that big of a deal.
conversation goes.
Yeah.
It's not like people I said that to someone once, like, "Oh my God, is everyone okay?" I was like, "Yeah, like this happens every night."
Which, which is so funny, right? Because you're telling me right now, and I'm literally like, oh, we're still, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like
You're like, "Yeah, this is so normal to talk
yeah,
about." Right. It's like things like that every day. Like, Yeah.
Oh man. That's the thing that's been like cracking me up. Like as I've been like talking to more siblings to like interview and stuff, it's like
Right.
it's so it fascinates me so much, and it's just like because we can all now just be better friends than so many people I've been friends with for like 5 years or
Right.
whatever. Because
We
it's
already have
just
more in common and understand each other.
yeah, and it's just like the understanding of like the struggle is very different and real.
Mhm.
Right, and I think like there's a
Yeah.
certain level of like okay, facing adulthood is its own set of issues, and
Yeah. Oh
lots
yeah.
of people can relate on that. But it's like you're an adult, you're navigating like your parent dynamics, your sibling dynamics. Your sibling is changing. Do you live with them? Do you not? You have guardianship. Okay, like there's all these like
Right.
nuances and like unlearning things, relearning new things, and it's
Mhm.
its own.
Yeah. It
It's
is. It's
so
such a
different.
weird, tricky thing because when you're living with them at home and they're little and we're all just comfortable there and you think it's
Yep.
gonna last forever, and then reality hits and they're an adult, you're an adult, and you're both trying to figure out just what the heck is going on.
Yeah, and the outside world, I gotta say, is like very not how we function inside. Like
Mm-mm.
the outside world
No.
is so like I don't, and that's something I didn't even really realize until like now. It's just like yeah, how I grew up in like the world that we had in our house is was functioning right. We were fine, like and
Right.
happy go lucky. Then you go to the outside world, you're like oh just leave us alone. Like it's so much. It's kind of like the what is it, the Cinderella shoe thing where like you have until midnight,
Right.
and it's like this timer where like okay how long are we gonna be in public at this dinner, or like
Right.
how long is this drive to this place, or like right, it's all so much, it's all very like
Mhm.
timetable oriented because it's they're only gonna last so long. We only have
Mhm.
we are human capacity.
Right.
Emotional capacities only can only last so long too, right? Like yeah, we
Mm.
can't fix all of it.
No, definitely not. I mean, and going back to the point of like the outside world is so different. I remember like visiting some of my friends. So I didn't go away to college or anything like that, obviously. And going and visiting them and be like, this is a totally different world. You guys don't have like locks on the inside of your door to keep people from getting
Yeah.
out.
Yep. You don't put
And like
locks on your cabinet so they don't steal food from your
right, I was
cabinets.
like, whoa, all the
Yeah.
knives aren't hidden, so because he used to cut
Yep.
his
And
ankle
this.
bracelet off. Like,
Yep.
like
All your shirts are actually like all just all over the place instead of in this one drawer where they actually belong.
right. I remember like, and as much as like I wouldn't trade my experience for anything. I remember visiting some of my friends and just being like so jealous at the time of how carefree they were and how like their only
Yeah.
responsibility was themselves. And I remember like my one friend in particular, like every time I'd visit her, I didn't want to leave because I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Like you're only responsible for you and you get to do wherever you want
Yeah. Like, can I live
and live.
here?
Yeah, and live wherever
Yeah.
you want and go wherever you want and just be what you want. And I was like, whoa, this is so cool. I wish I could do that. But I mean, at the same time, like I would go home and be like, "Oh, I missed you so much. I missed all of you. I missed being here." So it was like, yeah, like the outside world and our actual reality were just so much different.
Yeah. It's yeah. It makes it interesting though. Like from I think I've learned to just value. I think I'm valuing just observing more now
Mm,
that I'm kind of like I have the like the brain space to be able to go, oh, you know what'd be really funny in this situation if my sister did this versus because before
right.
I'm just like full on like I'm searching for everything, making sure everything's okay and like all this stuff, and now I'm more like yeah, that sucks. Okay, let's just
Yeah.
do that. I'm gonna go take a nap. Like,
It
yeah. So it's nice
is
to
what it
have.
is.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the nice things about. I will say that is one of the nicer things, kind of like living away, is that it gives me space to kind of give me the things I want to think about. Just because I spend so much time like thinking about my sister and like what's gonna bother her and what like I can do to help,
Right.
and like I prioritize her so much, but now I have like space to be like, oh, I should just call her, and then I can do these other things. I'll just
Right.
make sure I call her, and having that kind of space for me is nice, because then I can breathe and enjoy kind of my space as my space, instead of
Right.
trying to like get my parents' attention, get her attention, stop her from
Mhm.
melting down, make sure my parents don't mess things up or whatever.
Right. Run
Yeah.
interference.
Yep. Interference was a big. I ran so much interference, I feel like, in
Mm.
general. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. Cool. Um,
Cool.
I guess as our closing question, are there any words of encouragement that you would like to share with our fellow siblings listening?
Yeah. I don't even know how to sum it all up, but I think the big thing that I would say to focus on is, always trust your gut when it comes to your sibling. I think that, it sounds like you have a similar relationship as I do with my brother, where we just get each other. And you know
Mm-hmm.
when something's off, you know when something's right, and to always trust your gut and, you know, with what's right for them. And I think one thing for like, especially like younger siblings, and I think this is something I would say to my siblings, is find
Mm-hmm.
one thing that you can share together. One thing that you
Yeah.
both really love. Like for me and my brother, it's food. It's food. We love food. We bake together, we cook together, we go eat together,
Yeah.
but find that one thing that you can kind of pair over, because I do think, although our relationship is super strong with our siblings, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that that's the case for everybody. So for those that are struggling to have a relationship, like find one thing that you can share together and like really drive that home and focus on that,
Yeah.
and then, build that relationship. And then for those of us, set some boundaries. I think
Yeah.
and it sounds like you too at some point were like super consumed with your sibling and your whole world
Yeah.
revolves around your sibling. And like for me, same thing, especially during COVID, my entire world revolved around him. At one point, if I was mad, he was mad. Like we were one.
Oh, like interconnected, like
Yeah.
everywhere.
And
Yeah.
I actually think setting these boundaries as far as like this is my life, this is your life, as painful as it was, has really strengthened our
Mm.
relationship and had
Yeah.
our time together to be a lot more meaningful. So
Yes.
I think that's what I would share with any sibling, depending on where you are in how your relationship dynamic is, or how old you guys are. Set those boundaries, find that one thing in common, and really trust your gut.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for your encouragement, and then thank you for being on the podcast. It was super
Yeah, thanks
fun.
so much for
Yeah.
having me. This has been a really cool experience. Any, platform at all to talk about, my bestie, I'm here for.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Special Needs Sibling Podcast. It's definitely a tough journey being a sibling out there, so I hope you feel encouraged listening to other siblings share their stories. Here's a couple of ways you can support the podcast. Number 1, tell all your friends. We definitely need listeners to listen to the show. Number 2, please subscribe wherever you're listening to stay up to date on new siblings sharing their stories. Number 3, you can support us on Patreon. Even a small contribution can help keep the podcast up and running. And last but not least, if you're a fellow sibling, please consider being on the show. We definitely can't keep this show going without you. Even if it seems scary getting your story out there, know that only you can tell your story, and that we're all here to support you. And even if you don't want to be recorded, that's totally fine. I'd be more than happy to chat offline with any of you out there who want to continue to build this community of special needs siblings. Until next time, this is the Special Needs Sibling Podcast.